Thank you very much, guys. I just thought of something. They banned out Akali, and they ended up playing against an Alistar and a Kalista. They had the bug happen against them, against OG, but they defeat the odds, man. Vitality, they always find a way to win.
Yeah, the Fiora, Akali ban.
Great ban. I mean, we obviously debated here. Thresh said it was one of the best bans you've ever seen. I wonder if it was a misclick instead of Alistar, because
probably
they wanted to trade. So
they are allowed. Let's just get that clear. They are allowed to
Sure.
talk to the referee in case it was a misclick. If their intention was to.
They also were allowed to pause when the Kindred thing happened.
They said
they
nothing.
Wanted to defeat the odds.
They decided to play, and when we don't know what happened with the Akali ban, but instead they wanted to have Corki, GP, and Kalista open, and then ban the Alistar, and you give one over and you take two yourself. But because Alistar was still there, it was actually a really good start for G2 in the pick and man phase, getting Alistar in the second rotation.
I think we all can agree that that G2 had a slightly better draft. But the thing with Vitality is that they excel very hard when they have their comfort picks. Like we see Cabochard and Fiora, we see Nukeduck on GP, we see Corki, which is like huge power pick, and Shook on Lee Sin. So even though I think they got slightly outdrafted, they still have their comfort picks, and it seems like they can just pull it through with that.
So basically, for Vitality, this was a good draft if you ask them. But looking just like across all the teams in the world, we would say this was a bit of a weird draft coming in.
Yeah, comfort picks for them. We looked a lot to Trick and to Shook. Trashy, what did you make of the game of these two, and especially early game?
So, I mean, in the early game, we saw Trick kind of dominated Shook in the vision game. Like, he was always, like, taking deep vision and kind of focusing on the pace of the game. But Shook got a good gank off in the top lane, which kind of set him a little bit ahead of Trick. But overall, Nidalee just have like the edge in the matchup. The longer it goes, Lee Sin has like an edge around a 6 when he gets double longsword. But yeah, I think we're doing okay.
We're actually going to take a look at, I believe, that gank in the top lane. Let's roll it up.
No, this has to be. This is a later play. So yeah, we'll go back to that gank later. So this is actually a TP play. This is something we wanted to highlight later on. Is the fact that this is what G2 does well. Look at Hybrid here. Plays the fight perfectly mechanically, but more importantly, look at mid. Look at bot. They're fighting away from Cabochard. You know, Cabochard is the hard carry of the team. Well, force fights at the other side of the map, and this is how G2 got ahead. But unfortunately, eventually they misplay later on in the team fight, and they kind of throw away their lead. But I liked what G2 brought to the table early. We saw Trick invade, plays deep vision. He went up for a gank. G2 kind of forgot about Gangplank ulti there, and that's where Shook got back into the game. But I feel like every instance where Vitality took the game in their hands was kind of donated to them by G2.
Well, they actually, G2 has the most deaths at the 15-minute mark out of all teams in the European LCS. And I always feel like they are playing on a knife's edge. And I think the next replay is going to show that they went in for the pincer move. They try and make it happen, but they just push a little bit too far.
Yeah, Trashy, what do you think about this engage coming from G2 once we roll the clip?
A little interesting, I think. But yeah, it seems like they're not on the same page. There's 4 men moving forward and kind of leave Emperor alone. And then Shook finds a really good kick on Emperor in a little bit.
I really like the ulti from GP as well there.
Yeah,
like you see the TP, put it behind to zone the team, and now there's the kick.
And this kind of just wins the team fight. Like if they don't utilize the utility that Kalista brings to the fight with his ulti and he just gets one shot, then they will lose the fight.
Yeah, definitely agree there. The GP ulti kind of spells complete disarray at the start of the fight. We see Perkz looking at Cabochard. We see Kikis chasing KaSing out of all people. And then Emperor on his Kalista just gets left alone. Hybrid goes out of range after ulti's been used, so he's a sitting duck. And then G2 go against everything they did well in the early game, which is play away from Cabochard, use the combined engage of Malphite plus the face call knockup, and they just botched that entire team fight. Props to Vitality for kiting it out, because we can say that G2 threw the game there, but they spread out at the right time and then went back into the fight later on once the abilities were used and they were on cooldown.
But these kind of fights are normally what G2 do so well. Like, normally they have good synergy in terms of how they engage, on the same page, very aggressive in the way they play and kind of surprise teams. So them making a mistake here doesn't make them a bad team by any means. Like, this is what happens when you play so many games. And for G2, they lost the game, yes, in that fight, basically. But it's not something we see so often from them.
It's easily identifiable as well.
I think I watched some of the mic check where I listened a bit to how the G2 was communicating, and it seems like Kikis is like the front. He just want to go in, you know, like he's like let's go. And I think this game maybe they got a little bit overhyped and didn't really pay attention to like their flanks. So maybe that's why.
That's something we remember from the Unicorns of Love times with Kikis
Yes.
as well, whenever we listen,
Yeah.
so that hasn't changed for him. Finally, let's look at these both teams. Now, G2 is obviously at the top of the table. Out of sight of the mistakes that they make here, do you see them as the team that ends the split in the top 3 as well?
I think the way they play the game right now is very good for the meta. Like they love to pressure lane. They push out their jungler sitting in the enemy jungler, and if the meta doesn't change, I think they will still be at the top for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I think G2 still are almost title candidates. H2K with Rio would definitely be the favorite, but G2 probably likely second or first, unless teams start really cracking down on Kikis. I think he's their main vulnerability, and eventually if people figure him out, maybe we can see G2 falling apart.
Yeah, the problem is always if you look at a team doing much of the same, maybe not composition-wise, but playstyle-wise. Again, we talk about it, Perkz pushing in mid, Trick invades into the enemy jungle. That's kind of the bread and butter of the early game for this
it's like
team.
SK kind of in
Somewhat,
Spring 2015
yeah.
where triple push.
And then Sven always into the jungle, enable him. So if you keep doing that for the next 9 weeks, teams will figure it out and obviously start playing against it a lot in scrims and on stage. That makes it difficult in playoffs. But then again, we still need to see more from every other team outside of G2 because they're also underperforming from time to time, like Origin and Fnatic and so on.
Yep, and Vitality in the end walks away with a win here, and there's one game left to play out today between Roccat and Giants as they both start to try and climb in the standings, hopefully for them. Stay right here because we